Ready.
Good evening, everybody. I'm calling this meeting to order. Today is August 26, 2021. We have a consent agenda. The agenda's been pretty much laid out. I wanted to say a couple things first. For those of you who are watching on Facebook and other digital formats, what you've seen over the last couple meetings is something certainly different than we used to have. As you all know, for quite a while, because of COVID, we were meeting via Zoom, and you were looking at us digitally. Well, the governor, former Governor Cuomo, decided that it was time for us to go back into, us meaning all public servants who have public meetings, to go back into this real person setting. And we've done that because the law has changed, but COVID had another set of plans, and the Delta virus has many of us still concerned, particularly in the health field, about people's safety. And so this room looks different than the last time you saw us meeting together. It is still available for, as it was before, for people to come and visit and listen in person. But because of COVID and the Delta variant, there's some different things about how we will proceed and how we are set up. You see glass partitions separating us. If the cameras were turned to the back of the building, you'd see just a few people scattered here and there. People are trying to keep social distance. As difficult as it is to hear us sometimes, most of us are, as we're required to, are wearing masks. Again, it's all for the safety of our colleagues and the community. The other thing that you will notice, and I feel obligated to explain it to you on behalf of my colleagues, is that the proceedings are a little bit different. Well, the first thing you probably notice is there's a big, huge screen sitting in front of our faces where you can sometimes barely see what we're doing. And that's not something we're doing intentionally. We're not trying to avoid eye contact, but these screens were necessary to allow us to advance in technology. We've gotten better thanks to our staff at going into the virtual world. There's a system called Board Docs, and that allows us to communicate with you and the documents that we have real time. So I just wanted to let you know on behalf of the board that there are some things that are obviously different and some things that are subtly different. But one thing is going to stay the same. We have an order of business, and as we always did, even when we were in the Zoom setting, is we began with an act of reverence. And of course, there are always reasons to be prayerful and contemplative about things that are happening in our community. And certainly we all in our individual lives have things that are happening that affect our ability to care for our children and make sure they get the proper education and care for our families. But on occasion, and sometimes too frequently, there are things that are happening in the national news that impact us all and draw us all together closer because we want to be supportive of those who are struggling. And today, my colleagues and I, and I'm sure many of you out there, are moved and disturbed and bothered by the events in Afghanistan. As I understand it, 12 military people have passed away, 15 are injured, and as my understanding at the Kabul airport, 60 people have been killed and 140 people have lost their lives, have been injured. 60 people have lost their lives, 140 people are injured. It certainly is appropriate for us to take this, serve in contemplative silence for those people who have been injured or who've lost their lives. And yes, most importantly for their families and loved ones that suffer, not to mention all those who seek to get out of Afghanistan and all those who are seeking to help them do that and the frustration they must feel. It puts everything in perspective. So I ask that on behalf of my colleagues that we all just share a moment of silence for those folks meeting those very, very difficult challenges. My colleagues and I thank you for that moment of silence. Next, as I said, some things stay the same. We have a flag, American flag here. We begin our meetings by saluting the flag, American flag. what was also consistent in this country, you're allowed to sit down and not salute the flag. You're allowed to stand up, do whatever you please, because that's what makes our country so great. So I'm going to stand, just my personal choice today. And let's see, can I see if I can find somebody? Usually what we used to do in the old days is we would call in a young person. But there's relatively young people here, but not the kind of young person that I like. Dr. Jallo, I don't think you've ever had the pleasure of leading us in the pledge. So why don't you? You're young too, right? The flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, to God, indivisible. Oh, thank you, Dr. Jallo. We appreciate that. All right. The other thing that you'll see us do differently is we're going to record our votes a little bit differently than we used to a year before COVID. And we're going to give you an example of that. I need a motion to accept the minutes from June 29th, July 13th, and July 27th. There a motion?
Motion.
I think I heard Commissioner LeBron. Seconded by Commissioner Powell. All those in favor of approving those minutes, note that your monitor is going to give you an opportunity to vote. Is that right, Madam Clerk? That's how this is different, folks. Watch this. It may take a little longer, but the records will more accurately reflect what we're doing when we're doing it real time. So there it goes. All right. So in addition to that, Madam Clerk, you correct me if I'm wrong, we're also taking a roll call vote. Is that right? Okay, so why don't we begin to my left and work our way down. Commissioner Clark?
I vote in favor.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Powell?
Yes.
Seems that we have a majority vote. Is that right?
That is correct. The motion moves 5 yes and 2 absent.
Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda. As I've said, if I mess up, I have some wonderful colleagues who will gently and nicely correct me, and we certainly have a clerk that will keep us moving along. But I see as the next item on our agenda, speakers list. I understand from the wonderful work of our staff, including Ms. Scott, I understand we have one speaker virtually available today. Is that right?
That is correct. Is Mr. Anthony McCabe available on Zoom? Thank you.
And by the way, none of this, you all know, none of this happens without staff that really just make us look good or better. And we, the Board of Education, thank all those staff members who are sitting right in front of us. We really appreciate it.
Mr. McCabe, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm coming to talk about something that probably doesn't get talked about very much, but something that is a real issue. So I'll just start reading now. So over the past 2 decades, the district has made strides toward proper climate control with the addition of centralized air conditioning units in many of our schools, including Monroe, School 58, and School 50. But many schools remain inexcusably hot in the earlier and later parts of our school year, including the Franklin campus and in many of our elementary schools. Both students and teachers have experienced incidents of illness due to the heat, and these issues will only increase as the time passes and our planet continues to get warmer, as we know it will. Rooms on the 3rd floor of the Franklin campus can reach over 90 degrees with a thermometer verified. And according to district regulations, we aren't even supposed to have fans, as it's considered a personal appliance. I forgot to mention that I am a teacher in the district. The Franklin campus deals with regularly bad attendance levels, and I'm asking everyone at central office to consider the idea of going several days without AC in heat like this, as we know can happen in the beginning and end of our school year. As our schools open back up and teachers are invited to return to our rooms to start setting up, many at Franklin are choosing to stay home, including me, because it's prohibitively hot throughout the building. I've already tried. As the district considers how to spend our once-in-a-generation federal funding, I'm hoping that maybe this could be a part of it. In addition to the idea that all students and teachers deserve a comfortable living environment, learning environment, I'm a living environment teacher, the addition of air conditioning would address the following points: equity among all the schools in the district, equity with the suburban schools, preparing our schools for the next century, including the predicted impacts of climate change, increasing student attendance, especially during exam prep season at the end of the year, and making our schools more widely available for community events during the summer months. In closing, I need to stress the acute issue of masking in our schools, something that I stand strongly by as a teacher and a believer of science, and asked everyone to think about how much hotter it's going to be for students and staff in the buildings without air conditioning during our masking mandate. So please consider the installation of perhaps window units or movable units, hallway units, something, and then consider hopefully a long-term fix, possibly with our COVID funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCabe. We appreciate you joining us tonight.
You know, sometimes I catch my own mistakes. One of the things I should have done at the very beginning of the meeting is provide for the court my rationale on an absence of one of our colleagues. Vice President Elliott was not available to attend today. She is not I'm told she is not feeling well. And I believe under the circumstances that is a justifiable excuse. And I ask that my colleagues agree with me and that agreement be entered into the record. Is there anyone opposed to my conclusion that her excuse that is being ill is legitimate? Madam Clerk, it appears that that's how it will be entered into the record. And thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is we just have Pac Report. Is that right, Madam Clerk? I'm sorry. Oh. Thank you very much,
Commissioner Malloy is not absent. She's intending to be here, but she's just coming back from the East graduation, so she's running a little late.
I know Dr. Nelms was there as well, so we'll give her a few more minutes, and so we won't enter any assessment. I had heard that as well, so we'll wait to see if she shows up. Thank you, though, colleagues, for pointing that out. Next item on our agenda is the Pac Report. I understand, after speaking to staff, that the Student Leadership Congress and the Bilingual Education Council do not have a report today. Of course, it's the summer, so we understand that. Pac, are they online?
Okay, we have, yes, the President, Kenyon Binns, is going to be joining us shortly on Zoom.
That's nothing, that's nothing new.
Hey, Mitch. What was that? DJ Mitch?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we're ready for your report.
All right, great. Hi, everybody. I'm Kenyon Binns, President of the Parent Leadership Advisory Council. Let's jump in here. Summer flew by, and June 30th was only 8 weeks ago. On that day, PLAC submitted a letter to the district with a list of points of emphasis that we wanted to see implemented in the district's use of the American Rescue Plan funds. Some might think our letter was blunt or aggressive, but we like to think it was just assertive. The main demand and theme was for a seat at the table as the funds are assigned for specific uses. Those seats should have included parents and students. I'll say the response to our letter was tepid at best. Despite that, we are going to continue to advocate to move parents further upstream in the decision-making process when it comes to our kids. I was recently reminded of Policy 1900, which is the district's parent. The Rochester City School District actually has an official policy for parent engagement, and that may come as a surprise to some. This policy mandates things like parental involvement with the Board of Education and the superintendent in policy development, something I just mentioned as it pertains to the ARP funds. There's also a section that outlines a grievance process for parents and families to file grievances. There is specific language calling for accountability for district administrators in assessing progress toward meeting national standards for parent engagement. PLAC will dedicate significant time this year to bringing the school district into compliance with this policy. We were able to meet with the superintendent twice over the summer to continue our ongoing dialogue. I am cautiously optimistic about her plans, especially for the Parent Rapid Response Team. But we did voice our disappointment in the district's response to the ARP letter. Be assured that we are going to continue to voice our opinions as parents. I want to remind all parents listening that you are invited to PLAC's next general membership meeting on September 15th. There, we're going to start digging into Policy 1900 and discuss strategies to bring the district into compliance. Thanks, everyone. That's all I have tonight.
Are there any questions for our parent rep?
Not a question,
Sure.
President White, but just wanted to acknowledge again that President Kenyon Binns was in attendance at our family forum, and we had other PLAC members who were in attendance, and we thank them for encouraging parents to participate last Saturday. Thank you.
Mr. Binns, I know I've remarked this before in the past on behalf of the board. We've had it's been a rocky road with our parent leadership group, as it was previously called. And I just want to note on behalf of the board, your responsible and consistent presence and informing the district and serving as an advocate for parents is significantly different than what we've had in the past. And people were trying, and they were trying hard. But on behalf of the board, I just want to thank you for that advocacy. And as you point out, we won't always agree, but we should always be informed. And the way you guys lead helps us be informed about the decisions that need to be made. So I know there'll be additional arguments and maybe some disappointments, but hang in there, because what you do is critical to what we do as leaders of the district as well. So thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is reports. I'll begin with my report. I just very briefly want to congratulate the district's leadership team, Dr. Myers-Small, staff, and most importantly, our parents and students. There was yet another consecutive year of increasing graduation rates. Although the increase was not what we've had over the years past, certainly one could have and should have expected that. It was a tough year for our leadership team. It was a tough year for every staff member, from cafeteria people to sentries to teachers to paraprofessionals, security guards, and obviously a very challenging year with distance learning for many of our students. But notwithstanding that fact, we had another year of increasing graduation rates, and that is something that we all can take great pride in. So on behalf of the board, I want to thank everyone from the school buildings to central office. I want to thank you for the good work and the diligence that you put in under the most difficult set of circumstances. That concludes my report. We don't have a report from Equity and Student Achievement. Commissioner Vice President Elliott is not here. If she has something to report, I'm sure she will put that in writing and forward it to you all. We also have a finance and resource allocation. I know our finance director was not available previously. Is that right, Commissioner LeBron?
Correct.
She's going to give a report today. Carlene?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that we're just going to be reviewing again the July month-end statements. So we're in that holding period, if you will, because not a lot has happened from July 1st until July 30th. We're just getting the year started. So we're going to go where we normally start off with. My favorite place is cash flow, and I know Callie will take us to slide number 5, which is in your packet. What you're going to see here is the impact of, you might remember at the end of month-end, that's one. Yep. With month end, and when we had month end in June, we actually were missing some state aid, right? It came in late. It came in on July 1st instead of June 30th, as had planned. So what you're going to see in this particular cash flow now is that money was received in July. So if we go very far over on the right-hand side, left-hand side, my other right, you're going to see where the highlighted columns, our starting cash flow was where we had left off in June. The money had come in, the state aid had come in that was supposed to come in on June 30th. What you're going to see is a nice bump, and then you're coming right back down to that bottom line that I had shared with you as a prediction, the green highlighted area there, what the prediction would be for month ended July 31st. When you compare that to where we were a year ago, we're in much more favorable standing when you compare the green shaded numbers, so we're off to a fine start. What's going to be really important, and Kalia, could you take us to slide number 6, the very next one? So I know President White had stated that he appreciated the visual when it came to our cash flow and how that cash flow was going to look, not just in a number format, but in a graph format over the course of the year. So when you're going to see those low points, that's where we're going to have to be especially careful when we're matching our Sursa and ARPA expenditures and where that reimbursement is going to come back in, because again, we're not getting any front-loaded money. We've got to keep that in mind. So now what we're going to be doing, what you'll see next month, is we're going to do an overlay. So where we had the money, where we were showing the impact of the state aid reduction of 20% and how that would impact the cash flow, for our next report, what you're going to see as we start projecting out the cash flow impact of Sursa, the first round of Sursa, we will have that inlaid into this graph so that we are going to again have to know where our vulnerable points are and watch those points so we do not end up in a cash shortage, right? So we want to make sure that we're in a good liquid position and keep it that way throughout the course of this adventure that we're about to begin. Does anyone have any questions with that? Were there any other questions with regard to the financial report? One other item I did want to add, if I may. We're in the process of, again, tightening our operating procedures. And so where you are seeing in your resolutions where you used to have that certified budget line item, what we're actually going to be doing, and I know this was included in a Friday letter, but just as a reminder, because it's going to have an impact, I think, on a couple of resolutions tonight, is that you're going to now see that the money is going to be encumbered. So where you have additional pay items, that money going out, we are actually locking that money down in the budget code. So instead of saying this is the certified budget line item as of this day, which in a way, if you think about it, doesn't really mean anything. It's old news, right? That happened long ago, weeks ago. So what we're actually going to do now for this fiscal year starting off is we're locking that money down in that salary line item, additional pay line item, so therefore it cannot be touched for other purposes, which is going to continue to shore up our financial position. It's going to reduce the risk. What we're having a little bit difficulty with in working through PeopleSoft again and again, it's an archaic system and we're doing it, it's trying to do its best for us, we're working through it. But when it comes down to the vendor codes, the contractual codes, that's a different story. It doesn't work the same as the salary codes. So we're still working through the process. And I think there's minimally one resolution this evening that's going to say something like money not yet encumbered. And that's what that means, is because yes, the money's in the code. Yes, the money's really there, but it's not yet locked down. But we have our eyes on it and it will be locked down. So hopefully next month when I report to you, we'll say we're beyond our systemic issues, we're good, and now we have a good solid practice in place moving forward. Any other questions?
Yes, I had one question I think it's great that you're going to encumber, but given the fact that we've renegotiated contracts and we know that the salary rates are going to go up, so it's going to be higher than what we have here. So are you going to re-encumber when those adjustments happen?
So it's interesting with regard to the way, and perfect question, that's a very good question. I appreciate the insight into that. What happens in RCSD is that there is no one other than the budget team and payroll that can actually touch those salary codes. None of the buildings have access, none of the chiefs have access. I don't even want access to it. I mean, it is what it is, it stays secured. Now, in other school districts, they do encumber the salaried positions, but some don't encumber the hourly wage line items. Here, because we have that added protection that it's only certain individuals that can touch those codes, we're not as much risk. Now, when you have additional pay items, that's where we want to say for sure, because you can't continue to keep up at, salary is salary. You can budget that for the course of the year. Additional pay gets a little dicier because then how do you know you're not exceeding? That's what was happening before. Too much money was going out against the same money, right? So with regard to the contracts, the contract rates, those that have been ratified those adjustments are being made or have already been made. And we will continue to make those changes as the additional contracts come forward. I'm in the new system that we're moving to, that is something that we'll have over it. But great question.
Any other questions?
President White, I'm going to ask for a motion at this time to accept the report.
Is there a second? Commissioner Adams, second.
Give me 1 second, sorry, I gotta switch over from the report.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Sorry?
Thank you, Kelly.
No
since
problem.
we're still in discussion with a motion and a second, I have a question about the presentation of the appropriations. The report doesn't look like it has in the past in terms of our expenditures. Have we just decided to do away with that report, or?
I'm a little bit confused, Commissioner Powell. The one that I have in my
pages-
packet is the same?
Pages 7 through 9?
Are you talking about the H fund and the K fund, perhaps?
No, I'm actually talking about the regular general fund, pages 7 through, let's see, we got
I don't
10,
have my number.
10 and 11, it's 11, 12, and 13. The revenue summary reports look similar to what we've always seen, but the appropriations or the expense side looks quite different.
It's the same format. All I can think of is because it's the start of the year, so you're not going to see the activity that you would see later in the year. We have not changed the format for you.
It's appropriations by functional.
This was the preferred format that you all had indicated that this is the way you wanted to see it in this level of detail. But Commissioner Powell, I'm grateful because you did bring up another item I forgot to mention. If you take a look at your H and K fund reports, you are getting more detail there. And that's even being spelled out in the narrative section of my report now. So it's giving you more detail what's happening in those funds. But the other reports have not changed. I don't think that there's going to be a change until somebody lets me know that it's needed. It's the same. I think it's just because we haven't had a lot of activity, which is a good thing this time of year.
I would expect that, but typically those reports were landscape formatted, maybe because we haven't had a lot of budget amendments yet, so there hasn't been a need to turn it landscape. I don't know. It's just, I'm just feeling a little disoriented by the presentation of it, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask who seconded the motion?
Yeah, all those in favor?
Wait 1 second.
Oh,
Who-
you
who
want me to
seconded-
motion again?
Who seconded the motion? It was you who motioned, and
No, it was with Commissioner Adams.
Commissioner Adams? And seconded by?
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Are you about to open the vote?
Yes, I have to refresh Commissioner Malloy.
Are we supposed to see a copy of this?
All set.
There
You
it
should
goes.
see the vote coming up now.
Okay.
All right, we're going to call for a roll call vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Yes,
All right. Student financial activity
President White, I
reports.
have to give my report,
What's that?
my finance report.
Oh, okay. No, I just said student activity funds, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
That was-
yeah, I'm sorry, that was supposed to be a part of it, but yeah, I'll make a motion separate. If I can get a motion for the year-end student activity funds and elementary activity accounts report.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are you good with that, Kalia?
I'm gonna have to, it's
Yeah.
fine. We're gonna edit it afterwards. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to go into the report then, President White.
Mhm.
The Finance Committee convened as Committee of the Whole on Tuesday, August 17, 2021. The Finance Committee discussions focused on the following items: the energy audit presentation from One Site Utility Services Capital, the September 2021 Finance Resolutions Review, and the presentation update from Superintendent Myers-Smalls on the CRESA funds. The financial reports review, CFO Pierce was unable to attend the August meeting, and so it is at this time we will welcome her to review the July 2021 unaudited financial reports. As referenced in the new board committee meeting schedule, and this is more for the public, the Finance Committee will be meeting in person every other month as Committee of the Whole, with the financial reports and updates presented in the board business meetings when there is no meeting. The next in-person Finance Committee of the Whole is October 19, 2021. And that concludes my report, President White.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. I apologize when I introduced Pierce. I should have let you do that. So my apologies. Governance Committee report. Commissioner Malloy.
Mr. President, before
Yes,
we
ma'am.
move on, were we supposed to have a pop-up for the student activity?
Our clerk is having a tough time getting the computer, so
After-
she's going to do
after-
some editing later on.
Okay, so you're going to go by the roll call vote?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
yes,
took the
no, no,
vote
no.
manually and I'll put it in electronically after.
I
Now,
understand. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Malloy, just so, and if Commissioner Powell was a little bit confused, I just want to make sure that everybody understands what's happening here, those that are watching. As I told you all, we've switched in a major way. So now, not only are we recording our votes digitally, and it's going on this system called Board Docs, but also we're now taking individual roll call votes. So what you saw happen was the clerk's having a tough time making sure the computer is keeping up with our speed, so she can later on go into the system and make those corrections. For those of you who are wondering, why is he taking the time to do this? The whole point of us being in public is so the public understands. And while we all may understand what's going on, somebody out there might not. So I'm taking the time to do that so that they appreciate the changes that have occurred since COVID. I'm sorry, Commissioner Malloy, go ahead.
No worries. Thank you so much. The Governance Committee met as a Committee of the Whole on Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. During our meeting, which was also our retreat, we volunteered to participate on various committees with the Monroe County School Boards Association. We also discussed our protocols and procedures relating to our new member or new board member orientation. We also received reminders related to the board's self-evaluation. And finally, commissioners were provided with an update regarding the 2021 August Superintendents and Board Retreat, which were held on August 5th and 6th. The retreat was a 2-day event geared at reviewing the past school year and planning for our upcoming school year. You can see pictures. Day one focused on the theme, A Year in Review, and commissioners received updates from the superintendent as well as the administration on several data points related to the district's strategic plan, our academics, our finances, the state monitor's plan, our graduation rates, and other performance data. Our second day focused on the theme, Looking Forward, and the board and superintendents and the executive cabinet participated in activities related to goal development and visioning for the district, as well as we reviewed some of our housekeeping topics. The Governance Committee hopes to host a follow-up retreat sometime in October for further data review with the administration. Our next governance meeting was a postponed meeting that's been postponed to Tuesday, September 21st at 5:30 p.m. Our work is going to focus on having a productive discussion on protocols and developing protocols as a group for our racial bias training for the board, finalizing our board goals and decision-making related to the board's professional development and travel schedule for the 2021-22 school year. And that concludes my governance report. Can I get a motion to approve?
We don't need a motion for the
okay.
board reports.
My bad.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's reports. And we'll begin with Superintendent Myers-Small.
Thank you, President White. Good evening, commissioners, and good evening to those watching either on Facebook or YouTube. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting my August 2021 Superintendent Report. I'll begin with participation in summer school. And as we shared a few months ago, we had over 20 summer school programs across the district, and you can see that they were catered to the following areas. We had schools in receivership, we had central elementary programs, the 9th grade academy, commencement, which is 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, the My Brother's Keeper program. We had a summer program for middle school students, middle level. We had extended school year, which is dedicated to students with disabilities, summer language academy, and other programs that included All City and School Without Walls. We anticipated or projected about a little over 3,500, and we had about 3,400 students across the district participating. Coupled with our summer school participation, Rochester City School District took over 3 different entities within our community. So we teamed up with Skate Lovers Roller Place, with the Rochester Museum and Science Center, as well as the Strong National Museum of Play. And I had the opportunity to participate at the Rochester Museum and Science Center. These were free program opportunities for Rochester students, and they were made possible due to a collaboration between our district, the City of Rochester, the Rochester Public Library, and Monroe County Library System. This is where we tackled unfinished learning by providing families the opportunity to enjoy each one of those facilities. Just as a personal note and reflection, when I participated at the Rochester Museum and Science Center when engaging with families, for many families, it was the first time that they had participated or had been to the Rochester Museum and Science Center. I also spoke with the president, and she shared her excitement and appreciation for having our scholars there. That day, the Rochester Museum and Science Center almost hit about 600 participants. The majority were ours, and they'd had not seen that type of attendance since, I believe, February recess. So for a total of 1,500 scholars had opportunities for enrichment and to extend their understanding and just to simply play, which I think is wonderful. Just an update on grab-and-go meals. This summer, we served approximately 106,000 breakfasts and 107,000 lunches to students in both Rochester City School District as well as charter schools since we ended school at the end of June. We also provided 55,000 breakfast and 57 lunches in our Rochester community centers. So we continue to support our students through nutritious meals during breakfast and lunch. School opening, we had extremely successful forums for both staff and families this month, and you can see the dates that those events occurred, and this focused certainly on return to school. Our meeting with staff on Friday, we had over 500 staff members participating. It was a total of 90 minutes, but over an hour was spent on responding to questions that were previously sent to our entire team, or we also responded to questions that were provided in the live chat. We received very positive feedback from varied staff members about this. We had a similar format the next day on Saturday with our families. That was a 90-minute exchange, and again, about an hour was questions and answers. And so we fielded questions from families who had concerns or what they should expect for the start of the school year. I'm very pleased to report that the family forum was also translated in multiple languages in real time, which included Arabic, Nepali, Somali, and Spanish. There are return to work guides that are available for staff on our website. There's a replay of the forum if you did not have a chance to see it or you'd like to view all or a portion of it. And there's also a copy of the extensive PowerPoint that was presented. Additionally, for families, there's a back to school guide, and they are all available on the website for reading pleasure. I'm very excited about the fact that school starts in person on Wednesday, September 8th. Unfortunately, last year, I did not have the opportunity to ride the school bus to school with students because of COVID, but this is something that I regularly participated in when I was superintendent in Brockport, so I will be starting that tradition in Rochester. So we have scholars who I will be riding the bus with on Wednesday, so I'm looking forward to that. Again, we delivered information to our families and staff through our forums, and I just want to focus on a few key points for those who did not get to participate last week. For those of you watching this evening, just a reminder or a reiteration, masks will be required at all times, both inside and outside of our buildings, regardless of vaccination status. We will maximize social distancing on buses. Students will be distanced to the extent possible, but may not be the same distance in every space. Per CDC guidelines, we are to maximize space, but if we can shorten those spaces should we need to bring more students back or we have more students participating in person at school. The goal, again, is to return every student or provide every student the opportunity to learn in person at school. All Rochester City School District staff are required to take a weekly COVID test beginning the week of September 13th. Vaccinated staff who voluntarily present confirmation of their vaccination status must do so by Friday, September 3rd. If they present this information, they will not be required to participate in the weekly COVID testing program. Staff who present confirmation after this date will continue to test until their status is confirmed by the Human Capital Office. I'd certainly like to welcome all of our new staff to the Rochester City School District. I participated in the new educator welcome this week or last week with Dr. Adam Urbanski, where we welcomed over 61 new staff. And there's a lot of excitement, and there's just a very positive feel to coming back. Certainly, there are concerns about just the transition from remote to in-person, but we have excited staff members who are ready to come back and to welcome our scholars. And then I just finally want to end on an extremely positive note. I received recently a handwritten note in the mail from a graduate of the Rochester City School District who wrote the book you see on the screen entitled The Truth About Me. Nikki Matthews is a 2003 graduate of John Marshall High School, which was located at our 180 Ridgeway campus. She now works full-time at Rochester Institute of Technology, but during the pandemic, she had an opportunity to finish her book, and it is a source of inspiration. In the dedication of her book, she writes that she showed a sketch of the main character, Jody, to her 6-year-old son, Miles. Her son liked it because the character looked like him, an African-American young boy. In her handwritten note to me, Nikki shared that the message and theme of this book is one that is sorely needed for today, particularly for the fact of the way that Black and brown boys sometimes see themselves in society. It's a great read for children, talking about being caring and being honest, adventurous, loving school, and learning about history. I want to publicly thank Nikki for sending me this book, and this is just yet another example of a fine scholar who received her education right here in the Rochester City School District, and now she is a published author. So thank you, Nikki, for using your skills, your talents, and abilities to create a beautiful book that portrays what many of our students look like in our district. That finalizes my report, President White.
Awesome. Any questions or comments, Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, I have a few. So I'm going to start at the first summer enrollment numbers. So I was just kind of looking at the projected enrollment and the current enrollment, and on the total, it looks, so I just did some calculations here. So projected enrollment, but the current enrollment, there was a difference about 201 students. But when I looked up to look at all the different programs and versus projected enrollment versus current enrollment, I just calculated all of these, and that does not equal 201. It's a larger number, because my question was going to be like, hey, what happened to these 200 students and what are we doing? But there's actually 247 students in terms of the difference from the total of what's being presented here versus the total if you go down both sides and do the math. So just want to point out that there's an error with that. I don't know what the true total number is in difference, but I am curious about those students and what outreach efforts, if any, were done.
Commissioner LeBron, so we'll recalculate and make sure we send that in the Friday letter. Thank you.
Please, thank you. And then also if any updates on what we have done to reach out to these students, if any.
Okay.
And
There was a very targeted plan, so we can share that as well.
okay, thank you. And then for the school reopenings on the testing, I have to bring this back up.
Okay.
And you know, I share some very strong concerns, and I also recognize that this is actually our board business meeting before school reopenings, and I have to bring up the issues around busing. But before I go into that issue, I have to go into the testing issue. So I'm hoping that since we're requiring weekly COVID testing, that testing is done in schools. I do not think it is actually feasible or realistic to ask staff to go to Walgreens to go get tested, especially when we have staff who don't have transportation. And I have to bring that up because I can't even imagine if this was me 10 years ago without a vehicle, having to find transportation and childcare to go to a Walgreens to go get this weekly testing. Although I recognize that individuals can take the vaccine, and I am someone who is for vaccines and pro-mask, so let me just put that out there. But I recognize that there is a lot of vaccine hesitation in our communities, especially our communities of color. We still, for Black and Latinos in this Monroe County, remain still some of the lowest in the vaccination numbers. And that is a reflection too of larger issues or vaccine hesitation. So I'm hoping that, and I will continue to advocate this, and I don't want to have to push this issue even further and ask people from the community and other government bodies to join me in this request, that we can figure out a way to do testing on site. I did ask some of the folks from the school reopening task force, and also the county, what they're doing for some of these things, and they are partnering or hiring a third-party entity to do some of these on-site testing, because the county also is feeling like they can't technically manage the size of this right now. And I know that the American Federal Rescue dollars, and I will bring this up again, the #1 reason why we are getting these dollars is to open schools up and do so in the most safest possible way. And I would be remiss to say that I support a COVID testing requirement where we don't make it accessible. For me, it's an equity issue, it's an accessibility issue. And even for staff who do have a vehicle, the notion of them having to either manage this during their school schedule or manage this on their own time to go do this when they may be hesitant. And everyone is not recommending the vaccine. There are some instances where doctors are saying because of your medication or the conditions that you have, let's wait, let's figure it out. I do think it is something that people need to talk about with their own medical provider to make that determination. So I'm going to stop there, and then I want to talk about the busing issue because it's come to my attention and I've seen it and I've heard from families, I've gotten emails.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yes.
Could we just respond? I'm going to
Respond
ask
to that,
Dr.
yes.
Miller respond to the testing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioner. Thank you for that question and appreciate your advocacy. And I would say that we would echo much of what you said, and we are working with Walgreens. We are working with each of our union partners to make it easier for our staff to be tested, including on-site. So we're working through those logistics and partnering with Walgreens and the unions to do so.
Thank you both, because I also saw your email, Dr. Miller, that said that folks have to go to Walgreens, so I hope we're able to send an update before school starts, which is just in 2 weeks. So the busing situation, there was a grandparent and also some other parents that have reached out because their transportation, they had to move, and so then there was a change in their address, and now they're being told that their student will not get transportation to mid-September. And I was just flabbergasted. I didn't even know how to respond to these individuals because this is what they were told. The issue is that they themselves don't have transportation. So they're like, we're not going to send my child, I'm not going to be able to send or get my child to school. And if this is what we're communicating to our caregivers and our parents about the transportation piece, that there's going to be a delay, with an understanding that there's also a delay because we have some shortages, I think we have to, I can't even comprehend that we would do this, but the fact that there are families that we're going to have kids returning back to school who are not even going to be able to come to school for at least 2 weeks until we get our transportation stuff sorted out. It's kind of unacceptable, and that we would leave it up to families who don't have transportation to tell them that they have to figure it out for the first 2 weeks. I just want to highlight that because that's come up. And also, I will tell you that I spoke to some staff in the district who are also being told to communicate to the families that is going to count and as an illegal absent, that we're going to mark these kids with an illegal absent. So I just want to put that on record that I do not agree with that and that we need to figure that out.
Commissioner LeBron, if you
Yes.
just would forward myself and Mike the email so we can follow up, because I don't know the logistics, but promise to, to follow up to see, because every scholar should have the opportunity to start on the first day.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Superintendent? Being none, next at bat is Dr. Nelms. Dr. Nelms, I owe you an apology. When I was describing the increases that we've had in our graduation rate, I did, as I naturally would, I turned to Superintendent Myers-Small and said, thank you for your work. The data shows quite clearly that part of the bump that we've had in the graduation rate, and I want to thank Rob Ullman for providing the clarity in that data, part of the bump that we've had over the years with our increased graduation rate as a result of the work that you all have done, that is the EPO. So I was remiss by not referencing you. I know it doesn't bother you, but people need to understand that you and your team have done good work over there, and our graduation rate increases are in part a result of your good work.
One village.
That's right.
That's good. All right, I want to just take a moment to thank the board for their continued support throughout the last few months. It's been tough going for all of us to try to adjust to school reopening and dealing with unclear guidelines. And I also want to thank Dr. Myers-Small for being a true partner and sitting on Zooms together and texting one another saying, did you catch that? Did I catch that? Did we really just hear that? That's not going to impact our kids differently than the rest of the county. A lot of times we would sit in these meetings with our area colleagues, and some of the decisions that were suggested would have had a negative impact on kids in Rochester. And so it was great to have a partner on those Zooms, kind of have your back, and myself to have hers when we heard such things, so we can advocate for all kids. So When I say one village, I truly mean one village, and we're going to keep rising together. Today's report is just a brief overview of what's happened in the last couple months. First, I want to thank the countless parents. I believe 21% of our parents attended orientation, including about 450 families last night at East. It was an incredible turnout, and so for us, it's an indication that parents want to be there, and kids want to be back in school. For students entering grades 6, 7, and 8, during orientation, they took their reading inventory, so we can be specific in when we place them next year for their literacy block. They went through the lockers and did the building tours, and it was just an overwhelming, exciting opportunity for all involved. And I want to thank the number of teachers and staff who came in the heat in those last few days and were part of it also. Like the teacher who spoke earlier, you know, we have some air conditioning issues that we are dealing with. I keep telling people we have 2 weeks till school reopens, and let's give our facilities folks 2 more weeks to get it under control, and hoping that happens soon. I also want to share some exciting news about the grand opening the delayed grand opening of 2 new additions at East. We have the dental suite. Those who were here a couple of years ago, remember we partnered with the Eastman Institute of Oral Health, and we have 2 permanent dental chairs in a location that was my office before I got booted to the trailer. And that will be opening in October. And so we're in the process of identifying students and talking to parents and recruiting parents and kids. And we anticipate that to be a tremendous resource. About 90% of our students actually take advantage of the clinic at East. And so some of those same kids will likely be engaging in dental care also. Also, I want to thank Wade and Willie Lightfoot from the community, 2 barbers, and who are going to spearhead through their organization the grand opening of our barbershop. We're going to have a grand opening, I believe, the first week in October, I believe. And we anticipate giving about 250 haircuts per year to start to students. And it's not just going to be haircuts. Willie and Wade are adamant this is going to be mentoring. They're going to have barbers speak different languages and really getting kids a full experience about the business itself, but also just some mentoring in the community. So we'll continue to do that, and that'll be open starting October. I just want to also thank tonight, you saw myself and Commissioner Malloy walked in a little late to tonight's meeting. It was our graduation and commencement ceremony for kids. I saw a number of ceremonies all over Twitter and Facebook. I saw Dr. Meyer-Small, I don't think almost all of them there. And they are absolutely incredible times, and our families are excited to see their kids walk the stage and to be honored. And so I appreciate that. We had 1 graduate who persisted from a previous cohort. They were a senior last year. We had 7 kids from this year's cohort to graduate, and we had 5 early graduates. And, you know, the question I always, before kids graduate early, I ask them, what are you going to do? Because if I'm going to just graduate early and go sit, I'd rather you stay and do internships. But I think 3 of those kids are going off to college right away, and then 2, I think 1 had military aspirations, and another one was going to work in a family business. I believe that was the last notes I received. So I'm not a huge fan of early graduates if they don't have a pipeline or pathway to somewhere, but these particular students have a plan. They work with their counselors, so I think the counselors are working with them and their families also. I also want to have a really special shout out to Jen Reese and the teacher leaders who organized a tremendous professional learning week last week. It was virtual. It was incredible to watch the staff engage meaningfully in writing. The focus for last week was improving the type of writers who write critically and also write through a racial equity lens. And that was last week's PD, and watching teachers edit and create text, understand the complexity. I also had the opportunity to visit the 4 young ladies who are attending the University of Rochester. They engaged in a summer program at the University, a bridge program, and when I met with them with the head of admissions earlier this week, the question that I did last week, the question I asked them was, what has been the biggest challenge or obstacle you faced since coming to university? And each of them said the writing. And they said that the level of rigor and expectation in writing was challenging for them, something they could overcome, but it was just different in high school. And so it was timely that the professional learning team has continued to decide to focus on writing as one of the barriers that kids have expressed as being an obstacle and a difference maker between them leaving high school and being successful or not. So I want to thank those teams for being very targeted, focusing on a level of challenge, and making sure that students have the ability to transition wherever they want to go in life, college, career, military, et cetera. Some of the goals of the week here, just so you know, for the upcoming school year, these are our goals. Goals are aligned with demonstrable indicators from the state, but also aligned with our 10-year academic plan at East. And I'm not going to read through these, but it's really comprehensive, and nothing happens in the East without leaning back into our goals and our expectations. You'll see these in our professional development plans. You'll see these in our weekly checks with students. You'll see these with our family and community engagement meetings, where we go back to the goals to make sure that we're being held accountable for our success or success of the school. Just, I don't want to reiterate what Dr. Leslie Myers-Small said, but we plan on reopening. We make sure students enter near the gymnasium. That's going to be incredibly important. It's a big space for us to get kids through. We're going to continue to push, not push in a sense of shaming, but we're going to make sure parents are aware of where vaccinations can take place. I think many of you saw last week the NBA players from the local area did a clinic for students. University of Rochester is doing a ton of clinics also, and the information has been tweeted, posted, shared with parents, shared throughout the entire community. Rock the Future is helping with those things as well. Again, it's about choice, but we want to make sure that parents can make an informed choice. And what we've heard from parents is that sitting with the pediatrician and hearing about the vaccines was much different than hearing it on Facebook or the internet. Having a doctor, not even their own primary care physician, talk about these things are important. It's also why we have partnered with the Black Physicians Network to make sure that those individuals are also sharing this message with students. And this is not just for East, this message is more global for the community. I've done a lot of work with that, and I'm going to continue to educate parents in that regard. My own children are vaccinated, and I think it gives me a peace of mind with them going back to school, and so they keep themselves safe and also their classmates. Just a few more slides. Just a reminder, fall sports. I know that we've gotten quite a bit of communication about kids being requalified because of COVID. Some kids did not see their primary pediatrician. Make sure that you check your emails. Make sure that you are checking in with your coaches. There are a number of opportunities to be certified at some of the rec centers. University of Rochester is holding a few clinics. We've given that to all the athletes, and we partner with Cameron Johnson and others who are also responsible for making this information available to kids. We continue to have a ton of kids wanting to play sports, and so we're looking forward to having a competitive season and a season full of fun and family enjoyment. Just best wishes to all of our scholars throughout Rochester, those who are going off to college, continue to check in. Those who are listening in the military, be safe, and those who are going to work. And I want to say that concludes my presentation. Again, I want to just thank everyone for being patient with us as a school district. We look forward to the beginning of the school year.
Any questions for Dr. Nelms? I'll begin with my left and work my way to the right. Commissioner Commissioner LeBron, I'm sorry.
And you know, Van, I'm not even gonna say it, but I saw you look right and then look left, and so I caught it, so. Sean, just a quick question about your school reopening plan. I was able to attend Dr. Myers-Small's forum for families, and I do want to give you all kudos. So let me give them kudos real quick, because the multiple language was first time I've ever seen it in the district, and amazing. So thank you to Dr. Myers-Smalls and her team for doing that. But I did hear in that forum that if there were cases of COVID, for example, isolated in a classroom, that classroom may be closed, or that school may be closed, versus we're just going to close the entire district down. So it would be looked at as a case-by-case basis. If you could talk a little bit about what your plan is for East around that, and then also if you are you also doing, I guess I'm a little confused if you are also aligned with the same for vaccinations and testing with the superintendent on, or you have
No, we
Okay.
are 100% in alignment, and I've been in constant contact with Chris Miller about staffing issues and about testing, and even making sure that those folks who are visiting from the University of Rochester are adhering to RCSD's guidelines and any other vendor. So we are completely aligned, and again, I think people don't often see the collaboration behind the scenes.
Right.
There are a lot of emails, a lot of conversations, and as I said, Leslie and I sit on the same calls with the rest of the county, and it's always good to have a second, set of eyes on issues to make sure that whatever is decided is contextualized with, the community of Rochester City in mind. That's not always the case, but I think it's great when we're able to say, nope, we're not going to do that because because transportation issues, because of busing issues. So we are 100% in alignment. The staff of East were part of the calls or part of the meetings, the virtual meetings that were held by RCSD, and so are the parents.
And then a closing, do you have a closing plan for if like there's an area, I don't even know, like the East Wing, there's more cases on that side, or are you prepared to be closing the entire school and then prepared to go virtual?
It's the exact same process as a city. We have to, first of all, Mike Mendoza in his office will give some guidelines and say that this does not rise to the level of closing down a classroom. This does rise to closing down a wing, but part of it has to do with compliance. He's very clear that if schools aren't being masked and then there is an outbreak, then that's when schools are going to have to shut down, because he can't guarantee that there hasn't been transmission. Well, can't guarantee it at all, but he can say that you lessen the chance if kids are wearing their mask, and we're diligent about that. So for us to stay open, we have to have kids in masks, we have to have staff in masks, we have to do reminders, we have to have ample supplies, and we have to make sure that we're following consistently across the district every protocol in place. So again, we've been in constant collaboration and communication to make sure we're being consistent. Nothing will be done different at any school without us, without us giving that permission.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Nelms? Commissioner Adams?
At the fall sports list, and I was curious about not seeing any volleyball on there.
I didn't hear your question, Ricardo, I'm sorry.
Curious about not seeing any volleyball on there.
It's not on their list. It should be. It depends on season. This is probably they should be on there. It should be. It's probably just an omission. No. My kid's a volleyball player, so volleyball, we're definitely gonna have that. No, volleyball's on there. All the sports would be there. For some reason I was thinking volleyball was a winter sport, but it's actually fall. We'll make sure that's updated.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dr. Nelms? Being none, thank you both very much for your presentations. Yes, Commissioner Powell?
I have an alibi question for Dr. Smalls, if I may.
Speak into your mic.
I have a question for Dr. Smalls that I didn't ask the first time.
Mm-hmm.
On the summer enrollment, there's nothing wrong with this table except that the commencement for line is you actually had more students enrolled than were projected. Were we able to stay within budget? And if so, how did we manage to do that?
You are looking, let me just make sure I'm clear. You're looking at the commencement, so
Yep.
475 versus 525, correct?
Correct.
We did stay within budget.
So was that simply by putting more students in already staffed classrooms?
Right, there wasn't a need to adapt, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Black, but there wasn't a need to add additional staff. It's just that you have certain limits with the class, so we hadn't reached those limits.
Got it, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, next item on our agenda is the consideration of resolutions. Let me preface our voting on these resolutions by making a couple of quick comments. First, you note that you have received a blue envelope folder, actually, And then you may notice in your resolution packets that there's some resolutions that have been highlighted in yellow. Superintendent Myers-Small and I have discussed these recent revisions and the circumstances that occasion them. And we have agreed that we all need to be more diligent about making sure that we have as few walk-on resolutions as possible. And she has renewed her commitment to that practice and that approach. Having said that, we have to deal with a number of resolutions that were walked on this evening. And thanks to Superintendent Myers-Small, and most importantly, thanks to Ms. Wade, our clerk, you have before you what I'm calling an integrated resolution packet. Whereas before, what we were confronted with was the resolution packet, the resolutions that came within the 48-hour rule, and then a separate packet of resolutions that were actually reflected in that. So an additional set of resolutions were devised. That was going to be a very difficult process to manage a meeting with. So thankfully, the administration, but again, I want to thank Ms. Wade, got together and came up with what I call an integrated resolution packet. And now, the reason for accepting these walk-on resolutions was there were a number of factors that required that we consider these resolutions. Most importantly, a number of these are HR resolutions that would result in our hiring school safety personnel and other critical employees that will be needed on the day that our school opens. These people can't just walk into a school. There's training and certification requirements that have to be fulfilled before these people even look at a school. And so there was a persuasive argument made that walk-on resolutions, that these needed to be considered this evening. Suffice it to say, again, the superintendent and I did speak at length about this. I know Dr. Jallo chimed in as well. But again, colleagues, we are confronted with a situation where if we don't act, it's not anybody in this building is going to be hurt. It's going to be our children. Again, let me repeat. At a certain point, the exigent circumstances, the emergency circumstances, aren't going to be enough to allow this board to consider walk-on resolutions. And again, thankfully, Dr. Myers is a receptive leader and understands, and a knowing leader, understands the challenges that it represents to the board doing its job. So I think we'll have that straight going forward. So tonight, you have one integrated packet. And because my colleagues have not had the opportunity to look at these additional 9 walk-on resolutions, I propose that we take a 10 to 15-minute recess, give everybody the ample opportunity to review these resolutions that are highlighted in yellow. The other ones you received within the 48-hour rule. But take the time that you need. I'm thinking 10 to 15 minutes in recess. And then when we come back out of recess, if you have questions that relate to these resolutions, depending on the nature of the question, we can discuss them publicly. If there are questions that relate to a specific person or an employee, of course, we can go into executive session. And after the recess, if you feel that you need to make comment or vote your conscience about any one of these add-on resolutions, because you feel that they are too late, you can do that at that time. So unless there is some objection, I am proposing that we go into recess and give you all the time that you need to look at these highlighted packets. Yes, Commissioner Powell?
And to that, I would only ask that we should have a motion to waive the 48-hour rule in our bylaws.
I would suggest, that's a very good idea, but I would suggest we do that after the 10 to 15-minute recess. Does that make sense, Steve? Any other questions or comments? All right, so Steve, we very rarely do the official thing of a resolution recess. That can be called for without objection, correct? Right. Yeah. So I'm calling for a recess, and as there is no objection, we'll go into recess for 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll reconvene. I do want to tell you all, there was a question as to whether we could discuss how to proceed in executive session. And I said, I didn't think this conversation that we're having could be had in executive session. We had to do this publicly. So if there are questions about a particular person when you've had your 10 to 15 minutes, then we can go into executive session. Steve, were you going to say something?
No, just we will need to come back and then convene into executive session.
If there's a question arising.
Right.
For those watching, Steve is our interim general counsel, but he's also our parliamentarian. And so if there's a rule about how you should proceed in these kind of meetings, he basically makes the final determination about how we should proceed procedurally. All right, so we're in recess for 10 to 15 minutes. Thank you, everybody. We are back in session, and I have had the opportunity to speak to a couple of my colleagues. First of all, I want to again thank Ms. Wade, Kalia Wade, for her work, and Kalia, if anybody else helped you out, please extend their thanks. I imagine it was a solo effort on your part, and I really, on behalf of the board, want to extend our thanks. But we now have this packet that is before us, and I did indicate that if there were any questions that need to be discussed in executive session, we could discuss them in advance of taking motions on the resolutions. And so, is there a motion for executive session? Ron?
Yes, I'm making a motion.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
To
Yes, I'm
discuss
sorry. To discuss I assume it's to discuss the terms and conditions of a particular employee.
Correct.
Thank you, General Counsel. There was a motion and a second. All those in favor of going to executive session for the purpose of discussing the terms and conditions of a particular employee indicate by saying aye.
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 There is a voting request put up by Ms. Wade. Just check that. We'll also let you know in advance, we won't be voting electronically or digitally when it comes to the resolutions. We're getting there, but we're not there just yet. So it appears that we're going to take a voice vote. Commissioner Clark, this is to go into executive session.
Yes.
Commissioner LeBron?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
The ayes have it. We'll be going into executive session. Anybody watching, we'll endeavor to finish our business as soon as possible, and we'll come back and complete the balance of our agenda. Thank you for your patience, everybody. I need a motion to come out of executive session. I think I heard Commissioner LeBron and seconded by
Yes, motion.
Commissioner Adams. Record that, Madam Clerk. All those in favor of coming out of executive session indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And we'll just wait for those of you watching for the vote, electronic vote to come up. Takes but a second to enter our vote. And now that we're back in session, Tom, everybody can see us? All right. Well, good evening. We are back. And the next portion of our agenda relates to resolving resource issues that the district has. You know, you got to buy books, you got to hire teachers, you got to make decisions about recommendation, tenure, resignations, a whole host of issues, but they cannot be resolved without this process of resolutions. Resolutions are written requests, and basically the board votes in favor or disapproves the superintendent's request. And so that's what we're about to do right now. Each resolution has to be called up in the form of a motion for the board to actually consider. As a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody earlier today, you know, these resolution packets that you can see on board docs and that I'm holding up right here, this is just really paper. There's no official thing happening by these things. The only time these things become real is when somebody makes a motion to move the resolution. That's why each time we consider a resolution, I or the chair of the meeting will say, I move the conversation to discuss this particular resolution. It's seconded, and then it's official. Then it's before the board. But before that, it's just paper. So that's how we'll get the superintendent and the staff the resource that we need. We'll do this by resolution. All right. First item, yes, Commissioner Powell.
Motion to waive the 48-hour rule as per our board bylaws, policy 2300.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Powell, seconded by Commissioner LeBron, that our 48-hour rule, which requires that the board get 48 hours advance notice of the resolution packet, that, as I explained earlier on, that did not happen in this case. So Commissioner Powell has made the motion, seconded by Commissioner LeBron. All those in favor of waiving the 48-hour rule indicate by saying aye. Aye. We are also going to vote electronically. And as I indicated, regularly, the intention is to have these materials to us 48 hours in advance so that we can do our due diligence and consider the resource issues that the superintendent seeks to address through these resolutions. All right, first set of resolutions we have is Resolution 82. Is there a motion to advance for discussion Resolution number 82?
Motion.
Been moved by Commissioner LeBron. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Commissioner Malloy, do you have any commentary on Resolution 82?
Yes, on behalf of the board, I just want to thank Mr. David Beck for his donation of goods and services valued at approximately $30,000 to help benefit our elementary students K through 5 for science and STEM programming, which is going to include supplies, experiential learning opportunities like field trips, and also lab experiences. So we thank him for that donation.
Thank you again, Commissioner Malloy. Commissioner Powell?
If I could just add, in addition to this substantial financial contribution, he volunteers in numerous schools throughout the district, and I would like to hold that up and show appreciation for his contribution of time and expertise as well. Thank you.
So it appears that Mr. Beck is a good example of not only making monetary contributions, but what often means more to our children. If you don't have the money, you can always volunteer your time. So thank you, Commissioner Malloy and Commissioner Powell, for pointing that out. Any further commentary on Resolution number 82? Let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of Resolution 82 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Seems, Madam Clerk, the ayes have it. Just to remind the folks watching, with these resolutions, we are not going to be electronically voting. We will eventually get to that point in our development, but not tonight.
Next month.
Next month. Thank you very much, Ms. Wade. All right, I next need a motion to advance for discussion Resolutions 83 through 95.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Is there a second? I think I heard Commissioner Adams. Any conversation or questions regarding Resolutions 83 through 95?
Mr. President,
I'll start down here and work my way back there. Commissioner Clark?
Yes, and I guess it's just an explanation on, is it 86A, girls who game? And I just wanted to have like an overview of what that program is and how does it accomplish its goals.
Superintendent Myers-Small?
Would you repeat the number, Commissioner Clark?
It was 86A in the old package. Yeah, still 86A. I mean, no, it's 85A now, right? Yeah,
86A?
86A, girls.
Dr. Black is on her way up.
So 86A is covering the remainder of curricular work for grades 3 through 5, which include our weekly planners, which is the documents that are created for teachers to have weekly plans so they know by week what needs to be taught consistently, and our 3, 4, and 5 common formative assessments, which are our every about quarter assessments that are given that align to the weekly plans. So that is 36A.
I'm sorry, it looks like it did change to 85A.
Okay.
It changed to 85A. It was 86A in the original pack.
That's fine, I'm here. 85A is also with me, and Girls Who Game
Yeah.
is a CTE pathway preview. So it allows students or female students to attend to computer science, and they run through a particular curriculum that allows them access in an underrepresented area. And the authorized pay here is for the adult to drive that and direct that with our girls.
Okay, so there's direct interaction for the 60 hours with the...
Yes, this is direct service to students.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, moving to, LeBron, do you have any questions? Commissioner LeBron? No?
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry. No,
Adams? You good? Commissioner Malloy?
I just wanted to make comment more than anything else, a public acknowledgement of, for numbers 88 and 89. For Resolution 88, this is just to say thank you to the U of R Flom Eye Institute for their generous donations relating to the vision services that they continue to provide our students. So just wanted to say thank you. They've included vision screenings, exams, prescription eyeglasses, referrals, and this has all been at no cost to the district or any of our students. So we really appreciate their commitment to our students' health. Also wanted to say thank you to Hochstein School of Music. This is in Resolution 89. They're going to be partnering with School 19 to provide additional musical and dance programming during school and after school for our students. And we appreciate and are grateful for these donations from our community partners. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Any further questions? There being none, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of resolutions 83 to 95 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Seems that the ayes have it. Thank you, Dr. Black. Moving right along here, we have resolutions 96 through 97. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 96 through 97? There being no questions or comments, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of resolutions 96 through 97 indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Seems, Madam Clerk, that the ayes have it. Next, I need a motion to advance for discussion resolution number 98 relating to
So moved.
special education. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you,
Malloy.
Commissioner Malloy. What was that, Commissioner Malloy? I'm sorry.
It was Malloy who moved it and
Okay.
LeBron.
All right. Did you get that, Madam Clerk? All right. So it's been moved and seconded by Commissioner. Being no questions or comments, let's go ahead and take a vote then. All those in favor of resolution 98 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seems that the ayes have it. Next, I need a motion to advance for discussion resolutions number 99 to 110. Those are human capital resolutions, and they incorporated or integrated those walk-on resolutions.
So
Again,
moved.
it's been moved by
Second it.
Commissioner Malloy. It's the plexiglass, folks. And seconded by Commissioner LeBron. Again, I'll make the first comment. I want to thank, because we can't thank enough, Ms. Kalia. Kayla is my niece. Kayla, just so that we're clear. Just so we're clear. Kayla is my niece, and
That is
All
hilarious.
right, just go on, right?
Just go on, President White.
Yeah, all right. So now that this Human Capital Initiative is properly before the full board, and so is my humility, let's go ahead. Is there any questions or comments?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner LeBron.
Just to Resolution 105, I actually want to personally congratulate Mercedes, who's one of our superstar staffs, along with Tom in the Communications Department. So just congratulations to her. And then for Resolutions 106, I do want to thank Kelly Briggs for allowing me to come in and speak to all of the new paraprofessionals and TAs and homeschool assistants. And I just want to officially welcome them again on record. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Any other questions or comments? Just so the record is clear, I want to thank, on behalf of the board, Kalia Wade. All right.
Couldn't let it go.
Let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of resolutions 99 to 110 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Ms. Wade, it appears that the ayes have it. Next, I need a motion to advance for discussion resolutions 111 through 116. Is there a motion?
Motion.
I heard
Second.
Commissioner Malloy this time, and I definitely heard Commissioner LeBron. Any questions or comments regarding these educational facilities resolutions? There being no questions or comments, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of resolutions 111 to 116 indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Ayes have it. Finally, I need a motion to advance for discussion resolutions 117 to 121. These are considered other resolutions. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
I heard Commissioner Clark, and it was seconded by Commissioner LeBron. Any questions or comments regarding resolutions 117 to 121? There doesn't appear to be any questions or comments, so let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of resolutions 117 to 121 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
It seems like the ayes have it, so those resolutions pass as well. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. There is none. The next item on the agenda is new business, Superintendent Update, the annual state report. Superintendent Myers-Small.
Thank you. Tom, if you would put the presentation up, I'll get started. So to begin this presentation tonight, I want to explain why the Rochester City School District is required to submit an annual report and to just outline specifically what it is. Education law requires that the Rochester City School District provide an annual report to the the New York State Education Commissioner and to the Board of Regents to provide updates relative to our academic, fiscal, and operational status. There are several report requirements which are listed that I'll just briefly go over. There's an executive summary that begins the document. Then we have to detail the organization of the plan. We provide an introduction. We need to include our mission and vision, which is a part of our strategic plan. We provide several statistical data points that most of what we reviewed during our Board of Education and Superintendent retreat. Carlene provided the information for the fiscal overview of the district. We do have to provide also a summary of current academic, fiscal, and operational status of Rochester City School District. We can provide recommendations for modifications to both the academic and the fiscal improvement plans. We have to provide a summary of what we plan to prioritize during the 21-22 school year, and then implementation of academic and fiscal recommendations for April, May, and June of this school year. So as far as a summary of the current academic status, and again, for our listeners, Our report is 95 pages long, out with those several items that I mentioned. And then there's another 50 to 60 pages of appendices that we submitted to the New York State, that we will be submitting to the New York State Department of Education. So lots of academic information, but just a quick summary. Certainly there has been significant updates to programs, materials, textbooks, as well as assessments, and the Board of Education has received reports through the Equity and Student Achievement. There's been updates from Dr. Black in the Friday letter to talk about what exactly that looks like and how that's played out. We also significantly fortified our program evaluation in the district so we can ensure that there is value added for the programs that we support the academic needs of our scholars. Summer programming we spoke a little bit about, and we diversified that, and we'll continue to evaluate what we need to continue and what we need to stop. And then professional development alone this summer has been incredible. The Department of Teaching and Learning, but other departments have participated in delivering a significant professional development to help our staff become prepared for this coming school year. Certainly academic challenges we needed to speak to in the plan, and student achievement we continue to work on. Our data, if you look at the past 3 years, 3 through 8 assessment, proficiency continues to be a struggle. The graduation rate, while getting better, is still lower than many of our counterparts, our districts. Attendance and engaging students back to school, particularly in the midst of a pandemic, was difficult, but certainly attendance was difficult in our district. And I'm working with the student services team tomorrow to review information about how to improve that through their strategic plan work. Declining enrollment, the board, myself, and others continue to be concerned that we are losing students to charter schools, to private and parochial, urban, suburban, and if you look at the research, you have more in black and brown families nationwide that are participating in homeschooling now as well. Our high school student progress, we have a plan in our appendix to talk about our concerns relative to students moving from one grade to the next, but ninth grade, the 2020 cohort is particularly concerning for us. And then certainly supporting students who are multilingual speakers. We have a corrective action plan that we work with the New York State Education Department. So that has been a challenge for us in the Rochester City School District. Our fiscal status certainly is getting better, and we have shared that certainly with our Moody's rating and our S&P rating has moved from negative to stable. Carlene and her team continue to work on closing out the fiscal year for the 2021 school year. We continue to solidify, modify, and make sure we are implementing control mechanisms to ensure that we have a balanced budget and we don't backslide to previous ways of doing business as it relates to our finances, and then really making sure that we maintain a healthy fund balance. Moving on to the current operational status, we mentioned about the deployment of 26,000 plus Chromebooks, multiple hotspots, and provision of learning platforms for our scholars at all grade levels. Safety and security, we implemented the Raptor visitor management system. That certainly will much more come into play this year now that we have brick and mortar attendance, lockdown button installation, camera installations, and upgrades to radio equipment to keep our scholars and our staff safe. Transportation, we transport multiple scholars across the district and across the county, but we have a fleet of multiple district-owned vehicles. We have students that travel to over 160 schools, agencies, and work agencies, and this percentage is really important. The safe driving record of 98% non-preventable accident rate. Recommendations as far as modifications to the plan, certainly streamlining the academic and financial plan dates and activities to eliminate some redundancy. We really feel very strongly about pushing forward an advocacy for virtual or online high school. We know that that does work for some of our scholars, and so we would like to see that fortified in the district. We would like to have some stronger language relative to addressing declining enrollment, and we've started putting some plans and developing plans to address that. We need to fortify the Department of Multilingual Education. You know that it transitioned into the Teaching and Learning division under Dr. Black and Dr. Morris's leadership, but we need to continue to make sure that we fortify that so that our students are getting the best. And then we did have very deadline modifications that we made going all the way back to December, and so that is listed in the plan. Our priorities for the 21-22 school year, again, none of these areas should be a surprise to our board commissioners, but again, doubling down, tripling down on academics to make sure that remains our focal point. We do have to have a cogent plan for addressing declining enrollment in the Rochester City School District. When I was here many years ago, our district enrollment sat at about 33,000, and we are now around 23,000. So our enrollment has declined, and we know that when enrollment declines, that certainly does have an impact on our fiscal with our finances. We do have to have much more purposeful and targeted advocacy and bringing our students back from charter schools. Right now, we have a little under 7,000 students during the 21-22 school year who will be attending charter schools across our community. Credit recovery for ninth graders. Our ninth graders really struggled during the 2021 school year, so our school chiefs and our chief academic officer, working in concert with Glenn Vanderwater, has put together a plan that includes working with principals and school counselors. Certainly multilingual education and supporting our learners is an absolute focus. We have to fulfill the requirements and the recommendations that are included in the CAP, which is the Corrective Action Plan. Certainly receivership school support. We have way too many schools that are in receivership, and certainly even just having one is too much. With the support of the school chiefs and others on our cabinet, we had a great meeting a few days ago in this room with all of our principals who oversee receivership, and really the focus of that interaction was to set the tone to talk about the balance between accountability and support, and that we really need to make sure that the tide is rising in those schools academically, as far as attendance and other demonstrable indicators that make them be a school in receivership. We have to re-engage our scholars to in-person learning. I think we had a nice start with a small number of our scholars, about 1,500, when Rochester City School District took over 3 entities, but we need to really get them used to being in school, coming to school, getting up, and really being active academic participants. And then trauma-informed care and practices. Again, continue to fortify what we're going to do. We've been working with the city and with the county to make sure that we have what we need in place to receive our scholars back. Many who have been sequestered away from school since we last were all in person on March 13th, 2020. Our next steps, and this is my final slide, is to submit the 150-page report to the State Education Department as well as Dr. Jallo for her review. That transitions into her review and providing feedback to us around her thoughts and the strength or areas of growth in our plan, or if there are areas that we are missing. So that would lead to edits to the annual report. We do need to, similar to last year, we will have public hearings relative to new recommendations or modifications that we make, so that we will go through the modification process, and then we will enact year 2 of the academic and fiscal plans, working collaboratively with Dr. Jallo, the State Education Department, as well as our both internal and external stakeholders. And with that, that is my overview of a very large and full document that is a requirement per education law. That ends my report, President White.
Thank you. Any questions? This time I'll begin to my right, and then I'll work my way to the left. Commissioner Powell, is your light on? Do you have a question or no? All right, Commissioner Broad.
Thank you. So first and foremost, I do want to thank you, Dr. Myers-Smalls, and President White too, because I sent an email and President White, we don't often agree, but you did agree, so I just stopped responding to the email. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to have this conversation, both on record, but also an opportunity for the board to have review what was being submitted to the state beforehand. And then when I got the report, I think I was expecting something a little bit different, and so I guess there's some clarification. And Dr. Myers-Smalls, I don't know if this clarification would even come from you or from the state of what this report should look like in terms of how it was, we're responding. But I pulled up Dr. Aquino's report, and what he would submit, what we would submit in terms of the response to his report, both to the state quarterly and then annually. And one notable difference, President White had to sign it along with the superintendent. So we did attach like a formal letter addressing the commissioners of the state, along with the summary. But I think for me, the biggest difference, if you will, is that we focus primarily on what action steps have been taken to address each of the recommendations. So it was like, here's the recommendation, here's the actual detailed step-by-step of things that they did, who the responsible people were. And I think that's because we kind of set it up that way too when we first got the Distinguished Educators Report. And we also used JIRA to manage it, and actually our board clerk was some of the support staff helping us manage this document. But on the report that we're going to be submitting, so I see like in pages like 9 through 12 is data that I kind of feel like, well, the state has that data because they're the state. I feel like some of this data looked like we pulled it from the state, but I did look at your sources, and it was Power School. But I don't want to, for me personally, you know, I feel, first of all, I think this document has to include all the board members, and as well as you as the superintendent somewhere in terms of a cover letter. And then I think on page 18 is really when it starts to address some of the, I was kind of confused about this too, about what we're actually, because it says priorities to meet, and I wasn't sure if this was part of Dr. Jallo's report or the district's annual performance targets, if this was goals. So I just want some clarity around that, but then I have to be honest, I just personally feel a little frustrated because I can't understand or make out like where we're at as a district. You know, I see progress on the goals, but then it's under RCSD district annual performance targets. There's green, red, and I know we had discussed this a little bit in terms of like the color code, but I do want to state for the public hearing this tonight that this is actually our first time reporting out with this type of report on an annual report. And for this board to have this conversation, and perhaps this conversation should have happened before we got to the final piece of this, because I just want us to have some alignment so that if I pick this up or someone in the community picks this up, that they're able to kind of follow along where we are at as a district and what we're supposed to be doing to, or what we are doing or have done or haven't done. And so I was just trying to figure that out in comparison. And I don't know if you ever look back at Dr. Aquino's, our response as a district to Dr. Aquino's report. I will tell you that some of our responses back to the Distinguished Educators Report was over a period of 2 different superintendents. And there was a time where we also voted on that final report before it went to the state. And I did not support the first response from the previous superintendent. I did support it when Dan was, Logar was here as an interim. So I don't know if there could be some conversations about how this is going to look like moving forward. Because I mean, this is done at this point, so I know you're waiting to just send it. So at this point, I'm like, yeah, send it, you already did it. I would ask that we add a cover letter to the state and that it's officially signed so that they can at least know that we as a board, and President White would have to sign on behalf of the board, at least reviewed it, because that's what it acknowledges. But I don't know.
So Commissioner LeBron,
Yeah.
if you go to page 8, though, it does we took that language directly from what the state shared with us. So first section provides a high-level overview. Second section explains how the report is organized. The third section is an introduction to the report and provides contextual information about the district. So we took that right from what the state sent to us. So when you go to the fifth section, provides important statistical information about the district. Those are all things we took what the state shared for us to do. So it is different from, very different from Dr. the report that Dr. Aquino submitted on behalf of the district.
Okay.
So there's narrative. We wanted to substantiate it with data points. Right, to further strengthen what we were saying, that we weren't saying it, that we had data to align or back that up. So it is more narrative in nature and descriptive about what happened.
So, yeah, and so thank you for that. And I think also too, I don't know necessarily if this is even a question for us to be having with you, or if we have this question, if maybe the board can also get some clarity from the state as to how the report looks versus how it used to look. But what I will say is Dr. Aquino's report is roughly around the same length as the current report you're submitting now.
Okay.
He also added the data as in the appendix. So there's a number of additional like things that he had the district submit. But really on the reporting back to the state, it really just focused on his recommendations and it was our response to his recommendations. So all the recommendations and like literally every single thing the district that we had to do it too for the board. We had some painful conversations around that and not in agreement ourselves as a board, primarily myself, but I think again, maybe, and Dr. Jallo, I'm going to kick this over to you because maybe this is the conversation you can help facilitate for us with the state in terms of getting us to better align. I just think this report that we're submitting, yes, it has a lot of data. It was difficult for me to understand, pinpoint some of Dr. Jallo's recommendations and what we've actually done to address them.
That's in
a different
Appendix B.
Yeah, but that's in your appendix, and when we did our report prior to, with the previous, and with the Distinguished Educators Report, again, the focus was on the actual action that this district took and where we were at, and whether it was met or not met, and what progress was being made versus.
Commissioner
So, Dr. Jallo, I guess I just want some clarity also from the state.
Actually, can I jump in for a second, please?
Yes.
So I shared a document with Tom that can probably answer some of the questions you have in terms of the format. The progress that we report is on a database system that we created based on Dr. Jallo's report. Very similar to how Dr. Aquino had it formatted. I remember working on that document when I worked for the board. I'm hoping that Tom can get it on the screen because what we have is one database with 2 separate areas, one for academic and one for fiscal. CALIA reports for the board, and the leadership in the administration reports for the rest of the administration. I'm happy to have a demonstration of that done for the board at another time so that you're able to see how it is that we're compiling that information, how it is that we are including demonstrable data to support the work that we are doing. The report that the state required was the format that it was submitted in, but we do have that information where you can go recommendation by recommendation. We also included an area that allows us to request modifications and allows for Dr. Jallo to also come in and provide comment.
Okay, so yes, and I will talk with perhaps Commissioner Vice President Elliott to see if that could be a conversation for like a future ESA demonstration. But my concern is this, that these are public records, and any family member in the district should be able to go on our website or go to the state's website, be able to pull this up and say, I want to see where the district is at with this report, with the state monitor's report. And if I'm struggling to read it as a commissioner, then I'm concerned that people in the community and our parents and our caregivers will be also struggling to understand and make sense of this. You know, Dr. Kino's report was long and lengthy too, but it was just in a way that's easier for people to kind of follow along with, this is the recommendation, this is what the district's done, this is what they still need to do. The other piece too with Dr. Kino's report, we had a painstaking process of this too, was that we timed those visually. So we do know in Dr. Jallo's report, the recommendations don't technically flow from like, all of this is due in September, all of this is due in October. We did take the time as a board with the previous superintendent to kind of weed out, well, what's all due in September and where does that fall? Does that fall under academics? Does that fall under finances? Does that fall under the board? And we redrafted it so that we knew, we had a visual. All of these things are going to be due in September. All of these things are going to be due in October. And again, I know that this is our first time reporting this type of report for the state monitor so these are the conversations I wish we would have had beforehand. But we're here now, and I'm okay with how you're going to submit this. I'm curious to see what feedback they'll provide to us, but I do want us to take this conversation to perhaps have a conversation with the state as well, and then see how we can find a happy medium to some of these modifications. Because at the end of the day, the state also has to remember that this is a public document and this district belongs to parents and students, and they have to be able to understand what's being done and communicated from the state and their Board of Education. So.
Dr. Jallo, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it is in fact a public document, so you have to give consideration to, will people be able to read and understand the progress of the district? I think that's very important to the public and very important to the legislature that wrote the laws that created this position. So to that point, I think that's correct. The next step is for me to receive this, send it, and then give feedback. And maybe through the feedback, it'll become clearer for the public. But I do think it's something to consider because the document that Marisol is talking about, the public won't see, and neither will the state. I think it's an internal document to help their workflow, which is fine, but no one else is going to see that. It's not going to be for public view. But I always kind of try to insist to the district that this is a public document. It will end up. So give that some consideration. Write it. But the next step is for me to receive it.
Well, I think what Commissioner LeBron is saying, we need to write a cover letter so we can work on getting that done and we can submit it either tomorrow. We have until Monday the 30th, so either tomorrow, the weekend, or by Monday.
That's fine. I've already started to read it, but that's fine.
Any other questions or comments? I would only add that it's late, but this was the problem with the state of New York. And I said to our legislative leaders, and I think I said to Dr. Jallo when she first came in, they had us jump through all these hoops, spent a lot of time and energy in doing that first report, and finally got to the point where the Commissioner Tahoe said, this is the kind of plan that can move this district forward. And within 2 months of her saying that, and hours of debates and conversations, the state, in its infinite wisdom, decided to scrap all that and come up with a whole new system of monitoring and managing. And you've only heard bits and pieces of it. You've heard Marisol make reference to it. Kalia could speak for hours about JIRA. We invested a lot of time and money. And the result that we see today of this report is not of the administration's doing, and I think you've implied this, Commissioner LeBron. It is because they're doing what the state has asked them to do, which is totally different than what we spent at least a year and some change doing. But that's water under the proverbial bridge. But I have said right from the get-go, I thought the initial effort was a colossal waste of time, not because what we did wasn't worthy. The commissioner said it was worthy, but they just shifted gears. And I even said to a person I respect a lot, Harry Bronson, I said, Harry, at least make sure what we did is incorporated in the legislation, that you will utilize that report. And they just decided to do something totally different. Reinvent the wheel, no offense, Dr. Jallo, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to have another person come in and do what Dr. Aquino allegedly did. It was just, and I don't care if they see it, it was a colossal waste of money and time because we put forward a product that they said could do the job. And all of our time, from commissioners to board members to finance directors, our time is valuable because it's meant to serve the citizens. And for political convenience or because people wanted to make a statement about doing something different, they wasted our valuable time, which they said was a good work product. And none of us, not the children, not an administrator here, our truth needs to be spoken. But now here we're at. We're here where we're at. And the administration has put forth its best effort. It will be reviewed by Dr. Jallo. Hopefully, they don't bring another expert in or issue another series of recommendations to come up with something else for us to do. Because at this particular point, our children can't afford that. They can't afford that kind of waste of time. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm not going to go back and forth with you, but I do just want to be clear for the record that my concern is that if I'm having a difficult time as a commissioner reading the report that we're about to submit to the state and trying to make sense of where we're at and what we've actually done, that my concern is that people in the community, our parents, our caregivers will also struggle to read this. And quite frankly, anything that we're putting out really should be accessible to the community when it's talking about what the actions that we're taking to improve schools. So I don't want to mix I think there's two separate issues. I just want to be clear about that. And then ensure that we're using plain language as much as possible when we have these types of reports. Because again, anybody should be able to find these on our website and follow along and understand what we're doing to address the concerns from this report. That's all.
No, and I do want to say, Commissioner LeBron, I agree with you, and here was my point about the colossal waste of time. I think what we had, while it was not perfect, did that. It did communicate to people where we were at, where we thought we should be, and what the numbers should be like. And the proof of that it was decipherable and acceptable is this. You had, some people might agree with or disagree with, you had a commissioner issuing a letter, and I'm quoting verbatim, this is the kind of recommendations that can move this community forward. In addition, I would say, Commissioner LeBron, I think it was, and again, I think our superintendent is following the format given to her by the state, but I think the prior format, this is where I think we agree, the prior format, I think, lended itself to people seeing where you're at and where you needed to be, in very bulletproof kind of format. But in any event, we are where we're at, and we have a report that's completed, and the state, through Dr. Jallo, will provide some tweaking, I'm sure, and some suggestions, and we'll continue to move the district forward. So thank you, everyone, for your work. All right, I think that's it,
I
right?
just need clarification
ma'am.
on what that letter, because I'd like
Oh.
to get this. So what is it that we need to put in the letter?
Well, let's think about that for a minute. What Commissioner LeBron is suggesting to the entire board is a cover letter where we're signing off and approving what is being submitted. I certainly don't have any objection to that.
Yeah, correct. And you signed off last year.
Yeah.
Or the year before, sorry.
Commissioner Powell, anybody else want to be heard?
That being the case, if what we're doing as a board is saying that we as a board have reviewed it and approve, then we need a motion to that effect? So that, or a motion that authorizes a cover letter and authorizes you to sign on behalf of the board.
Well, generally, Commissioner Powell, if I could respond, generally, when it comes to correspondence, I generally don't require a vote. I just try to see if there's a consensus and some permission. Because the bylaws say I can send letters to other officials, but with the approval, that have been reviewed by the board, and presumably their approval. So, I'm just trying to feel people out. If anybody objects to that, then, and there's a number of people that object to it, I won't send a letter, but my sense is that we don't need a formal vote. Steve?
No, I mean, if there's specific language that somebody wants to put forward, then the vote would make sense. Otherwise, you do generally just get the gist. But at this point, I don't know what everybody's feeling.
Okay, so my concern isn't so much about us authorizing you to sign correspondence, but if the report requires both the superintendent and the board presidents.
It doesn't.
It does not. Thank you. I don't see a need for it to be overly complicated, just a transmittal letter. Here you go.
But Commissioner Brown, you correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think, and this is part of the way the legislation was not really attuned to what the problem was. It was not only the superintendent, but it was the board. And for the board not to be a part of this substantive plan is insane. But I think you're right. I don't think it calls for the board president to sign. So basically, Commissioner LeBron, it's a transmittal letter, but we should be writing a letter that says, we've reviewed this, and with the superintendent, we approve of this. But in their infinite wisdom, they weren't thinking about that. Just keeping it real. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, just for clarity, this is a transmittal letter that's attached to the report that we've submitted in the past for all of Dr. Aquino's report. It was just literally a brief introduction of what was being attached and some bullet points. I mean, it's on our website too if anybody wants to look at it, but it does acknowledge that the board, along with the superintendent, reviewed this, and then President White, you signed off as the board president, and then our interim superintendent signed off at the time. And prior to that, it was Barbara.
Sounds like we've already got the template.
So, yeah, what we'll do is, Kalia, look at that letter, we'll send it around, and I'll say, I don't hear from you within 24 hours, we've got enough time, right? That will be the letter that will be attached to the report. Okay, I think there being no further business, I can ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Before we do, are you going to do the survey? How are we going to do this? You're going to send it to us?
It is posted.
It's posted?
So, yep.
Okay, all right, give us a second. Fine.
I'm sorry,
Folks who are watching, what we're doing is, you guys have heard me say this before.
Posted how?
We try
Right
to
on the bottom of the agenda, it says board meeting survey, and if you click the hyperlink right there, it should allow you to
Oh, I see it. Thank you.
take the survey. Yeah.
Oh, see it. You said, Kalia, it's to the left and at the bottom?
Yes, all, number 12 on the agenda and board docs.
Oh, I see. I'm
Yep, and all
sorry.
the-
I had it in adjournment, sorry. Okay. Are you able to tell us when all the surveys have been submitted still, or no?
No, that's Zoom. But if you're done, we can, we can actually adjourn and finish on our own time. Yeah, we can do that too.
So can I get a motion to adjourn? Been
Motion.
moved by Commissioner LeBron, seconded by
Seconded.
Commissioner Malloy. All those in favor of adjourning indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Be safe.
Hold on, please take the virtual vote as well.